I'm Kenneth, a relationship coach and a psychotherapist. Every relationship is different and every breakup is different. Work with me and you'll get professional help on your situation. And if you're in no contact, focused on personal growth, my workbook series, The Knowledge, will help you make changes like you've never made before. Available now at AskCraig.net. Hi there, I'm Coach Kenneth, and in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about my ex had a crazy dating history. You know, sometimes we can find a really strong connection with somebody, and as we get to know them, we start to hear about their life and their history and their dating history, and sometimes we can hear some really concerning, bizarre things. And of course, people can be resilient and they can heal and they can grow, but it does leave a lasting imprint on us. Those really traumatic things can have a big effect on us, especially if we don't really work through it, we don't process it, we don't get into therapy, because we can really develop some trust issues when things are really stressful and traumatic in our past. And, you know, when we don't trust people, that often causes us to get controlling and manipulative because we don't like any space. And of course, it can come out in a lot of different ways. But that is one of the biggest ways that I see it come out. Somebody was mistreated, they were cheated on, lied to, and so now they're afraid it's going to happen again, and they're going to go through that same kind of experience again. So yes, people can be resilient and work through their stuff, but you also don't want to ignore somebody's history, their trauma history, and you also don't want to ignore what they may have or may have not done to grow and heal from that. So today, I've got a story from a guy in his 50s that has been watching my channel for a while. He did about a year after I launched the channel. His other breakup was a long time ago. And he said he did the workbooks, started therapy, which he's still in, went to the gym, and continues to focus on personal growth. So that's awesome and great to hear. You know, some of you guys don't really stay committed to personal growth, and either you feel like your ex moves on, or you think that it's not going to turn around, and you kind of give up on the personal growth, and then it can really come back to bite you. So he said, I felt that I had been doing very well and was traveling to different states. In my past relationship, I had a tendency to be codependent, according to my therapist, so I worked very hard on that. I did not realize I was avoidant until recently. So that's interesting. How did somebody that did the workbooks find out recently that they were avoidant? Well, I'm going to come back to this because I do think it's important to understand that who we date and how they're treating us can impact how we are behaving in that relationship. I met my ex in a professional manner. She came into my office about a year and a half ago after seeking a divorce from an overbearing, abusive husband. Okay, so that's important to keep in mind. He met her after she was going through that divorce process, which can be very stressful and traumatizing on its own. I did not find out about how abusive he was until much later. Anyway, she's in her early 50s. I noticed immediately she was very beautiful, but also very troubled mentally and suffering some physical problems that her doctor attributed to stress of her marriage. Okay, so he's seeing the impact of that marriage and how she was going through abuse. And I do think that the stress of it could cause a lot of physical issues, but you don't want to ignore these things, because if somebody doesn't really work through that and heal from it, It's going to impact their mental health. They'll probably struggle with anxiety and depression and all kinds of other areas. I represented her through the course of her divorce, which ended in early 2024. I was nothing but a professional in my representation, and there was never any sign of attraction between us through the divorce. Approximately 3 months after her divorce was finalized, she reached out to ask me to review her property line. I believe this was a strictly business situation. I went to her house and viewed the property, and we talked a little. During the course of the conversation, I got the feeling that she really didn't invite me out there for business. This was a personal visit. Nothing happened, and I left. We continued to communicate through text for several months, and it became clear that there was a mutual attraction. I had instructed her to go to therapy during my representation, and she was going, but not happy with her therapist. He was also seeing her teenage son, who had some other issues. She quit therapy shortly afterwards. I finally asked her on a date in the summer of 2024. Okay, so he waited a while. He waited like 6 months. Sparks flew, and it wasn't long before we ended up in bed. The sex was very, very good. We continued to see each other 1 to 2 times a week, but it was only a couple of months before she told me she loved me. Well, this often happens if you are courting somebody right, if you're courting a woman right. Usually after about 2 or 3 months, someone will start to have those feelings and tell you that they love you. And that's, I think, fairly normal, but you got to take things slow. Remember, you don't know somebody right away. You got to make sure you get to know them, and you got to pay close attention to the red flags. Otherwise, if you get attached, then there's going to be a whole lot of issues that come from that later. I really, really liked her, but I was not ready to reciprocate that. I told her that we needed to go slow and see where this went. She then opened up to me that the divorce I handled was not her first divorce. Wow, that probably kind of shocked you. You'd been talking for a while, you'd represented her in this divorce, and now you're hearing, wait, you were married before? Better get that info. This is where things start to get pretty crazy. She actually got married when she was in her early 20s to a man who was almost 10 years older than her, that her religious parents set her up with when she was only a teenager. Yeesh. Not good. It turns out that the husband cheated on her with her mother. I told you this was going to get pretty wild. Wow. Her husband cheated on her with her own mom. It's going to get crazier than that. They separated, and so did her parents, with both marriages ending in divorce. A year later, her father persuaded her to remarry the man, and he would remarry her mother so the family could go back to normal. How can the family go back to normal? The daughter's husband cheats with the mother. Then the father tells her, go back to your husband. I'm going to go back to your mother. And she did. I have to tell you guys, I've never heard anything like that before. This is pretty wild. I've heard a lot of crazy things over the years, but a husband cheating with the mother, the father finding out, divorcing her, then taking the mom back and telling the daughter, no, go back to your husband who cheated with your mom. That's a new one for me. The husband cheated on her with she, him again. That's what he wrote. But I think what he's trying to say here is the husband cheated on her with the mother again. Wow. It was about 8 years before she married the husband I was familiar with. Okay, this part is going to be pretty graphic, so I'm going to leave it a little vague because of censorship and things being censored. Okay? I later learned that he raped her repeatedly to the point that she needed to have corrective surgery in the fall of 2024. Okay. And this is tough for me to explain where the surgery was. It might be in a different place of the body than you're expecting. Okay? This is pretty graphic. This is pretty horrible. And I'm trying to share it with you guys in a way that it's not so graphic for the video. But obviously, we're dealing with extreme trauma. This poor woman had to go through corrective surgery, and you can imagine how painful that was physically and emotionally to go through something like that, and I'm sure it happened more than one time. Problems arose because she wanted more of my time. She would sit outside the park located next to my office after school ended to watch when I left. Okay, so this is a bit scary, right? She has got a lot of trauma. She's probably afraid that you're going to cheat on her or that you're going to abandon her. And when you don't really process those things and work through them, it leads to, kind of overcompensating and doing this, which would be scary, right? She stalked my Facebook, even though I rarely post. She was very upset that I didn't want to spend more time with her during the work week, but my job is very stressful and my schedule is erratic. Well, you can understand that she's been through a lot. She's scared that if somebody doesn't spend a lot of time with her, they're going to abandon her. She's going to be alone. And so it's causing her to stalk, which ultimately is going to push him away. And remember at the onset of the video where I talked about how when we date certain people, it makes us behave in different ways? Like he said earlier on that he didn't realize he was avoidant until this relationship. Well, my guess is that he probably normally isn't avoidant, but when you have somebody stalking you physically at work, stalking you online, that you know that they're doing it, it's going to make you more apprehensive and back away, which would look avoidant. Okay? So that is why I think he's seeing, oh, I was avoidant with her, but I don't think he's probably normally avoidant. But when somebody's doing these scary things and you're seeing this kind of overwhelming history and you're concerned about dating somebody because of all these issues, it's going to make you more apprehensive, which is going to make you look avoidant. She would get very upset and cry, and I simply did not understand what the big deal was. I thought she was needy. She told me that I made her feel safe, and I enjoyed being with her very much. I thought a couple of times a week was sufficient for such a new relationship. And I agree that it is. But when you have people that have been traumatized and they're afraid of abandonment, they're going to kind of want more time with you, which could push you away. I must also tell you that she did not tell her older children about dating me for the fear that they would disapprove of dating so shortly after a divorce. Well, that's understandable. It had been about 1.5 years, I think, right? I told her that I thought she should find a new counselor since she didn't tell the previous one about any of those issues. I must also tell you that she's still living in the marital home because she hasn't been able to sell it yet. Basically living out of boxes. I went on a trip with my daughter at Christmas time as a gift for her. I saw my ex before I left and things were great. I sent her lots of pictures and texts of my trip, but I didn't call her. Apparently, this was the straw that broke the camel's back. She told me that she wanted different things, and that I am happy and content in my life without her, and I don't need her the way she needs me. Well, that's probably true, because she has a lot of anxiety. She doesn't want to be away from you. She wants a lot of closeness, and she can see that you don't want that much. You didn't reach out to me and call me while you're on this trip, so I don't think you care about me. Well, I'm a mess. I pleaded with her to reconsider and told her that I would be more attentive to her needs. When we were together, things were always fantastic. Yeah, and that's a major issue that I see with a lot of couples, is that when you're together, things are great, but when you're away from each other, one person can't handle it, or one person wants more space during that time, and then we get in that anxious avoidant trap. I went into no contact a few weeks ago, and that's where we're at. She did like a Facebook post this week that I posted. I must admit that I posted it solely with her in mind. Guys, sometimes those things are so obvious to your exes. Be very careful about how you act on social media. I'm telling you, people can see right through it. I think I'm an avoidant and she's anxious. Except now I'm a wreck. What do you think? What should I do now? Okay, so there's obviously a lot going on in this situation. She's got a lot of trauma that she's experienced. And I think if you're going to date somebody like this, you would have to be more emotionally attuned to them, and it could be exhausting. Okay, it's really on her to work through those issues to get to a better place where she's okay not communicating with you and seeing you all the time, but she might not get there. And if you wind up staying with her, it could be mentally draining that you're constantly having to reach out. She's doing things that are kind of scary, like stalking you, stalking your work physically, because she's afraid of abandonment. Ideally, a best case scenario here is that she starts to recognize she has some issues and that you really didn't do anything to violate her trust, and that she has to give you a little bit of trust, or a little bit more trust than she was giving you. Now, so maybe the compromise here is that she winds up trying to give you more trust and you try to give her a little bit more attention. And so we kind of meet in the middle there. Because if you're going to be with somebody like this, it's going to be a struggle in a lot of ways. And, understanding trauma would be great. Do whatever you can to, understand what it's like for partners that do have a trauma history. And obviously that burden and responsibility shouldn't be just on you. But it should be on her to work through it and you to be understanding of her struggles. This is a tough situation. Obviously, she's been through a lot, and ideally, she gets some help for herself. I know you said she's in therapy, but you also said she isn't talking about any of those major issues with her current therapist. So that's not good, because how is she going to work through that and get to a better place? I'd leave her alone, and if she reaches out, I would focus on reestablishing rapport and having a good time with her, and then slowly trying to have some conversations of, I realize that when we're together, we're great, but when we're away from each other, you really struggle, and maybe I'm not giving you enough attention. So how can we find a compromise that works for both of us? But also, you don't want to overwhelm by trying to talk about all the problems and everything that went wrong right away. You kind of want to ease into that and focusing on just reattracting and building that connection again at first. And then you slowly have those tough conversations here and there. This is a tough situation with a lot going on, and professional help would be great for both of them to make this connection last. You don't want to ignore her issues, though, and you don't want to ignore that she does do some scary behavior. I personally wouldn't want to be with somebody that is sitting outside my work because they're afraid I'm cheating on them and stalking me like that. I would be uncomfortable. Sometimes those behaviors are pretty scary. But if you're willing to work through it, That's up to you. But tough situation. If you want to get my help personally, you can go to my website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Skype. You can get my creative healing course and my workbooks there. But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth, and I will talk with you soon.